Hi, I'm Allie, and I have too many ideas and too little time. Let's get to it.
I have been sewing for I don't even know how long at this point. I know when I really got into it, it was probably around 8th grade, but I know I was sewing before then too. I don't know. It just kind of happened. I think I learned from a little bit from my mom, a little bit from my grandma, and my grandma recently died, and I know she's just watching me down from heaven saying, "You doing great, girl. I wish I could see all the things you're doing, but I can see them from up here." But I just think she would be so proud of where I am and where I'm going. That's what my goal is, honestly, is to make her proud. So I didn't do a whole lot of sewing in high school, but I did enter some dresses I made into like the county fair, and I did a sewing with cotton contest where I made a dress that won 3rd place at state. And so that was a lot of fun, you know, getting me excited to sew. And then when I went into college, I was a theater major. I did a lot of musicals in high school, and I loved it so much. And I thought, that is what I want to do with my life. And then I got stage fright, like major stage fright. So I ended up doing most of my college theater career in the costume shop, which, you know, I had a sewing background. It was fine with me. I mean, sometimes I wanted to be up on stage, but I think that's where I fit better. So I learned a lot through that program, and I got to costume some really cool shows. My senior year, I co-costumed a student-devised, written, designed, directed, and obviously acted because we were in college, prequel to Alice in Wonderland called Painting the Roses Red. And I still show people those costumes because I just love them so much. But then after college, I went to Arkansas Fashion School in Little Rock for a little bit, and it wasn't my thing. We're not going to get into that. It's fine. It is what it is. But it did, you know, play into my love for sewing even more. So that's when I got into the indie sewing scene, and I started sewing a lot of indie sewing patterns, especially from Helen's Closet and True Bias. Those are probably my top 2 favorites right now. And even back then, this was like, I don't know, 5 years ago. We're not going to talk about timelines. But I just loved going to Joann's, rest in peace, and buying fabric and matching it up to whatever pattern caught my eye and then making a beautiful garment. I mean, some of the stuff that I made, I just absolutely adore still, even though it doesn't fit me right now. Another thing we're not going to talk about, but, you know, things happen. So 2020 through 2022 was just an absolutely wild ride, and not in the good way. And so I was sewing some, but very sporadically, not very well, just kind of here and there and everywhere. And I had a lot more ideas and plans in my head than I was actually putting down into practice. And then life happened. I moved back home, and I was super depressed for 2 years and just didn't sew at all. Didn't do any of my hobbies at all. And, you know, that's life sometimes. So then last summer, I got inspired again in all my hobbies. Like, I started reading again, and I hadn't read a full book, or sometimes even parts of books, for about 2.5, maybe even 3 years at that point. And I read 6 books in 1 month. Like, that's, reading is another topic I could go on all day about. But this is an intro video for my sewing channel, my creativity channel. Reading is creative. Anyways, different video. I didn't get back into sewing right away. It took a little while. And at that point, I was also like, I don't like the way my body is looking. I remember from before, when I was still sewing, everything that I sewed just didn't fit quite right. It wasn't how I imagined it would look on my body, and it was just super frustrating. And body image has always been a huge problem for me. And again, that's a topic for another video, maybe. I just longed to sew. So I was like, hey, why don't you try quilting? And so I got my grandma to teach me some quilting things because it's definitely a completely different world than garment sewing. I did not know how to use a rotary cutter and a quilting ruler, and it just confused everything out of me. I was just like, which way do I hold it and what am I doing? It was, the first try was absolutely awful. But then I was like, okay, let's find something small, because I started on a big quilt and it just was not, I don't think it was written well, first of all, because the measurements on one part were really off. And it was also a lot of pieces. Why would I choose that for my first quilt? Anyways, I started on a tote bag, and it was a sawtooth star tote bag. And I got obsessed with them. So I made several. I started selling them to my friends, and I was like, hey, let's make a business out of this. And so I made a little money off of that. And then I was like, I'm going to just like whoosh, 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 create a whole entire business. So I had this whole entire idea, like a 3-year plan figured out, and a name and everything. And then I started listening to the Love to Sew podcast again by Helen and Caroline. That was my favorite podcast from when I was sewing clothes before. So I was like, hey, let's start listening to it again. I'm caught up on like almost all of my other podcasts. I'm sewing again. Let's do it. And then I started missing sewing clothes. So I decided, let's kind of overhaul my process, get myself excited to sew clothes again, lose the weight, and then sew the clothes. So I kind of did that. I had bought myself a shed, which I will do a shed tour eventually when I clean this place up. It's a little all over the place right now. But I bought myself a shed, got that all finished out, painted, decorated, filled with all the sewing goodies. And I overhauled my clothing patterns and organized all my clothing fabric and made it all nice and pretty. I matched fabric to patterns that I wanted to sew and just like planned. I'm a planner. If I'm not making a list, I'm dead. But then I got super excited for making the clothes, and I didn't want to wait until I lost the weight because I knew it was going to take forever. I mean, that's just how it is. Bodies are weird. And so I just decided to, whatever. If I have to alter my clothes later to make them fit a smaller me, cool. If I never get there, cool. I have clothes right now that I like and that were fun to make. So I started sewing clothes again. It's been very slow. I have not made a lot of garments since I started sewing clothes again. In fact, I think I've only made 2 things. And one of them does not fit very well. Surprise, surprise. But this time on the other end, it's like too big, like way too big. Weird. Then I was like, maybe I don't want to do quilting all the time. I was working on a larger quilt, which I enjoyed the piecing of it. I haven't started the quilting part of it, and I can kind of tell that it's going to be a pain in the rear because I'm working in a small space, and it's certainly not the biggest quilt in existence, but it's bigger than what I was working with. And I didn't want to make bags all the time because after about 10 of those sawtooth star bags, I was like, I don't do factory work. I can't push out the same thing over and over and over again. That's just not me. I like using my creative brain. So I kind of just let it go and thought about maybe some different business ideas. So still do like small commissions for local people, but also I thought about writing and selling quilt patterns, and then I thought about writing and selling clothing patterns, and then I thought about writing and selling embroidery patterns because I got into that for a hot minute there. And so I thought of a whole bunch of ideas for that, and then I was like, okay, slow down. Now that's way too much. So I just kind of chilled on the whole entire business idea for a while. I was just like, maybe I just don't necessarily do it as a business, but just make a little money on the side every once in a while, whatever. I want to be creative and be creative all the time, not just after work. So that is why I'm starting this YouTube channel. And I hope that I can have enough creative ideas that people will like. I mean, I like my ideas, so maybe somebody else will too, to, grow this YouTube channel and have fun with it. Because having fun and being creative is my favorite thing in the world. I love it. I got a brain that gets bored easily, and I write everything down. So I'm going to do some cool stuff, and you're going to watch it. So anyways, that's pretty much my origin story. Stay tuned for more.
Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more creativity.